25 years ago, Jurassic Park released. It was the first time that dinosaurs were essentially revolutionized onto the big screen for the world to see. Its cultural significance and very well its effect on public perception of Dinosauria cannot be understated. It flag-beared the paleontological popular culture into the 21st century. In just under a month's time, another one of its various IPs in the form of a simulation game will be released, Jurassic World Evolution. This one feels big, it just feels right. With now a thriving fanbase, a renaissance in its movie production and developed by the reassuring hand of a so far reliable industry veteran, this one might be the game of our lifetimes, so far, surely for me. But what Frontier are doing in regards to their species list is shaping up to be special. Like its venerated predecessor Operation Genesis before it, Jurassic World Evolution will break new ground in its willingness to push dinosaur variety and diversity. It all started when this game was announced. Immediately, like many a fan, I pondered on what dinosaurs that could be added into the game. Having watched Jurassic World and followed the promotional media campaign behind that movie, we were exposed to a plethora of new dinosaurs that had never been represented in film canon. Admittedly, many were tied to the existing canon, via novels, comics or games, and so for the die-hard followers of the lore, it was welcoming but otherwise not really that remarkable. So being a Jurassic World game first and foremost, we would expect all if not most of the canon referenced dinosaurs to be in the game. The question was if there was more. By early February, me and many other content creators on YouTube had submitted their own wish list, ambitious dreaming to say the least, on the dinosaurs we'd read about and admire upon that were never really touched and looked at by the Jurassic Park universe. I uploaded a pretty hopeful mega wish list outlining many notable, interesting and exotic dinosaurs some people never even heard of, with the underlying expectation none of them would ever be in the game. For me, it was wishful thinking. More of a fun side game to reinvigorate my passion for dinosaurs and get me hyped up. Well, I was wrong. On a warm Australian morning later that month, when I woke up to the news of a very different creature, something completely unexpected, the feeling I got was indescribable. A combination of shock, emotion, surprise sure, but then hope. The Chasmosaurus was announced. This was the indication that would mark Frontier's boldest design decision yet. The decision to introduce dinosaurs that were not in any way linked to the main Jurassic Park lore. Sure, Chasmosaurus appeared as toys and in a Game Boy Advance game, but to the majority of Jurassic Park fans, most have never set eyes upon it, let alone heard of its existence. To the rest of the keen dinosaur community, Chasmosaurus was a very famous ceratopsid. It was the basal specimen that allowed the classification of the ceratopsids into two camps. The Chasmosaurines with their longer frills and large skull structures, and the Centrosaurines, typically that have shorter frills and less dramatic supratemporal horns above their eyes. The Chasmosaurus' piece de resistance was its ornate and cumbersomely large frill with two large openings. Unlike the Triceratops, this hollowed out frill giving it the name the opening lizard. Throughout popular cultural history, the Chasmosaurus has been overlooked by the more famous Triceratops. Perhaps because Triceratops was the first discovered and led to of Neil Charles Marsh's designation of the entire ceratopsid classification. Perhaps the name Triceratops was much more evocative of the creature's distinctive features, its three-horned face, and thus the name was easily recognizable and less easily confused with other dinosaurs. As the archetypal ceratopsid, Triceratops would go on to be an essential star in the Jurassic Park movie franchise, which has unfortunately neglected other ceratopsid varieties. Until of course now, with this year's Fallen Kingdom set to showcase the Sinoceratops. Triceratops however was even the first species to get a profile treatment from Frontier for the upcoming game. Meanwhile, the Chasmosaurus has thus faded into public obscurity but is still a very recognizable name for many with interest in dinosaurs. Thus, the Chasmosaurus marks Frontier's first foray outside the Jurassic Park universe, and this was quickly followed up with the addition of Struthiomimus, which appeared in the March gameplay demo. Although not as groundbreaking as Chasmosaurus, it reinforced the fact that Frontier were thinking outside the box, aiming for large-scale biodiversity, large or small. Then the penny dropped again with Centaurosaurus appearing in late April, which stunned followers as much as gave confidence in the direction Frontier were taking the game towards. From then on, many names, confirmed or not, were thrown around, such as Dracorex, Trunkingosaurus, Giganotosaurus, and Polacanthus, to name a few, shaping up to be one of the most diverse dinosaur rosters of any game in history. Just like how Jurassic Park elevated many species into household names, particularly the case of Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus, Frontier and Jurassic World Evolution is providing recognition to the more obscure, but no less interesting dinosaurs that have been unearthed throughout the world. This allows players of the game to enjoy a wider selection pool of options to showcase. For a simulation park builder, where customization and creativity go hand in hand with the management aspects, this lateral depth is important. Think of it like a Zoo Tycoon game, where the animals are the most important feature of the game, and thus you would expect a wide variety of options to display in your zoo. In fact, one of the many reasons why the first Zoo Tycoon was so famous and well received was because it exposed, especially to a younger generation, various obscure and endangered species, many that typically don't feature in real world zoos and wildlife parks. For instance, the okapi, clouded leopard, and Przewalski's wild horse were some of the animals that I had personally never heard of, but became synonymous with my Zoo Tycoon experience. I want to reinforce this point further by looking back in retrospect on Evolution's beloved predecessor, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. For the generation that was able to enjoy that game 15 years ago when we were mostly all children ourselves, such species as Acrocanthosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus, otherwise widely obscure to us at the time, were enjoyed heavily. By that time, Jurassic Park 3 had released, so we had already seen a handful of different species in the film canon, but in a sense we grew tired of the old guard, the Tyrannosaurus and the Velociraptor, and wanted to experience, quote, fresh content. That's why the newer carnivores appealed so much, as they were unique in their own ways, brought in distinctive behaviors, aesthetics, sound cues that made the game much more enjoyable and improved replayability drastically. In fact, I'd even go on to say the design decision in that game to limit the player to 5 dig sites actually helped with this, as it would spur the player to start a new island to find the new and exotic species that they missed out on in their previous saves. It was not just the carnivores but the herbivores that also evoked these memorable experiences, from the playful small flocks of the Dryosaurus and the Homalocephalae to the trumpeting Ouranosaurus and the dynamic sauropod Camarasaurus. In Operation Genesis, there was a mechanic where gentle small herbivore species like Dryosaurus, Homalocephalae and Gallimimus didn't need to be put into enclosures, and you could let them run around your park. It would actually sometimes boost visitor happiness for a particular guest. Now, I didn't learn about this mechanic until later on, and when I did, I really appreciated this extra sense of depth. These things you learn that arise organically in games is very much a pivotal contributor to the sense of immersion. Because of this, these games become something so much more than just Jurassic Park games, but dinosaur games in their own right. The Jurassic World name acts as a mask on Evolution. It gives it credibility, an aura of respectability, and a familiar name that people can recall back to the celebrated film series, but deep down Evolution wants to, as its name suggests, evolve. It wants to become a much grander vision. It wants to carry the players around the world on a paleontological excursion to Madagascar, to China, to England, to experience the world's many other overlooked dinosaurs that the predominantly Western audiences have yet to experience. This is not just a singular trend, we can even see this in the movies. As Fallen Kingdom approaches, we can tell their willingness to expand their horizon and embrace the diversity of the dinosaur genera, as it has been continuously updated since 1993. Sinoceratops, Stygimoloch and Baryonyx are some prime examples of some lesser famous dinosaurs that will soon pretty much be immortalized into prominence. Hopefully the same could be said for Evolution, but Frontier's experimentation with their dinosaur roster will no doubt have an everlasting impact. Furthermore, this design decision opens the possibility for more fruitful DLC for the game. As we know, the willingness and capability is there from Frontier, so we can expect the desire to produce great post-release content that can encompass more variety. Think along the lines of Cryolophosaurus, Concavenator, or Amargasaurus. These dinosaurs are no longer suddenly impossible, but genuine contenders to be implemented in the game at some stage. We no longer need to ponder whether or not Frontier can do it, but more along the lines of will they do it. A pattern has emerged that has so far made Frontier more endearing, and that is the topic of scientific accuracy. Now, recall back to the announcement of the game. One major topic of contention at the time was whether Frontier would appease the fans or the science. Feathering was a key talking point, pronated hands, postures as well, etc. But it was pretty obvious that as a Jurassic World IP, the franchise was to be respected, and the fundamental designs of the lore-associated dinosaurs were thus reflected in that way. But now we have such species as the Centaurosaurus, colloquially known as the unicorn dinosaur, but its head crest design actually reflecting the contemporary scientific stance. I'm sure many people who knew about Centaurosaurus would have not been up to date on this rather recent development, including myself, and thus we can clearly see Frontier are doing their homework. The Chasmosaurus, for the most part, is a pretty accurate representation as well, and thus there is a conclusion to be seen, that Frontier are willing to respect the scientific consensus if it's a species that is not associated with the Jurassic Park universe, and thus allows them to stretch their liberties. It's a great middle ground that I think will be beneficial in the long run for both sides of the community, the Jurassic Park fans who wish to see the movie canon respected, and the scientific community who wish to see more realism. It has to be said that even the most loyal diehard fans of Jurassic Park can enjoy the more accurate portrayals of the newer dinosaurs, since they don't cause any conflict of interest. Perhaps an even greater effect is the positive impact on paleontology. Jurassic Park was known for its effect on public perception of dinosaurs as a whole, a fundamental shift from reptilian-like to bird-like dinosaurs, a debate that was occurring in the paleontological community which was otherwise rather unnoticed by the general public. Again, I'm going to have to backtrack to using Operation Genesis as an example because for me personally it was a profound effect. That game, like Zoo Tycoon, not only entertained but taught, with both games having an encyclopedia-based database that detailed the scientific facts of the animals or dinosaurs in question. In Operation Genesis, I would often frequent the so-called Dinopedia and learn a great deal, especially for those dinosaurs such as Acrocanthosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus, which were otherwise unknown to me quite literally at the time. This, coupled with a flourishing interest in dinosaurs, really amplified the need to seek more information and thus become much more educated and aware on paleontology as a whole. Sure, everyone learns what a Triceratops is, what a Tyrannosaurus is in pretty much every primary school on Earth, but a Chasmosaurus, a Centaurosaurus, a Struthiomimus, those names are really only learnt by doing your own research, and as a child that is usually by borrowing dinosaur encyclopedias from your local library, by watching BBC or Nat Geo documentaries in your own time, but these things grow from the catalyst that is the initial exposure, and the best form of engagement arguably is in a super interactive video game to kickstart that drive. Now of course there are some key examples that might be used against this argument, particularly the case of Deinonychus, but there is a pretty simple explanation really. Essentially Frontier's hands were tied with the issue of Velociraptor. Having to respect the portrayal in the movie, the inclusion of Deinonychus would ultimately mean two very similar dinosaurs. So in an attempt to distinguish between each other, the Deinonychus was heavily changed. Personally, a differing skin variation, different sound cues, and maybe a slight size alteration would have been enough for me, instead of butchering the entire skull shape and adding a crest, but I do admit the Velociraptor issue is the real culprit, and thus Frontier were limited in what they could do with this certain species. It's better than having no Deinonychus in the game, I guess. It's hard to envision the future before the actual game is even released, but one can very much summarize these design decisions as healthy. It's healthy not only for the game, but for the Jurassic Park franchise as well. It's healthy even for the game industry, particularly in the realm of dinosaur games. This innovative push for diversity sets a framework for the future Jurassic Park media, games and movies alike, to keep improvising, to keep expanding, to not settle for the tried and tested Tyrannosaurs and Triceratops and Velociraptors, but push for those Chasmosaurs and Centaurosaurs that we've been discussing. It encourages the dinosaur gaming industry, which has been bereft of quality lately, to bring to light to the wider audience a more sophisticated array of dinosauria. I have recently been more and more intrigued and impressed by the folks over at Shadow Raven Studios and their work with Prehistoric Kingdom. It's already hard trying to compete against Jurassic World Evolution's impending release and its vastly greater resources, but the determination to persevere with not only a diverse, unique and colourful roster of dinosaur species, but also pushing for extreme scientific accuracy is admirable to say the least. It's a direction that I want the Evolution game to push towards as well, not settling for not only the satisfaction of the players, but trying to exceed our expectations. Quite frankly, Evolution is the idea and vision of dinosaur loving gamers for the past 15 years, and for us it's no longer about settling for less, but dreaming for more. The dinosaur gaming industry had a short spell in the last decade, with games like Dino D-Day and Primal Carnage, and quite more recently The Isle, Ark Survival Evolved, and Saurian, and countless other examples. These aren't bad games by any means, but they certainly cannot be compared to the ambitions that Jurassic World Evolution is trying to accomplish. If Evolution becomes a success, and we all still have to remember it hasn't even been released yet, so it is still an if. If it succeeds, it can spur on greater creativity, enthusiasm, interest, and quite frankly better professionalism in the dinosaur genre. There honestly is a shortage of really good dinosaur games out there. For example, recent years I would have to quench my thirst for dinosaur park building by playing the dreadful Jurassic World the game on mobile, which essentially has as much about building a dinosaur park as you'd expect from a cash grabbing mobile game. Nevertheless, they had a really diverse roster, consisting of marine and flying reptiles and Cenozoic mammals, so that kept me engaged for quite a while. Will Evolution be the catalyst for greater quality in the dinosaur genre market? It really can, but as always we're gonna have to wait and see. These things take time to notice, and it could be a decade before we can truly analyze if Evolution did have an effect on the industry. Finally, what is the future of the game itself, particularly in regards to the roster? So far they really have exceeded my expectations and a whole lot others by pushing diversity and variety, but it can't stop there. The next step is to pay homage to the Operation Genesis roster, essentially the birthright of the dinosaur park simulation subgenre, and the species that so far have been left out are really disappointing. Such species as Acrocanthosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus really need to be in the game at some stage. The marketability of carnivores as a DLC is a pretty sound point, so I can see them being added in the future, but look, as much as I hate the DLC model, if a DLC is done right, if it's got good content and has been well made, what the fans want and is reasonably priced, then I'm gonna buy it, and hopefully I'm gonna enjoy it. With Frontier and Planet Coaster, I have to say most of their major DLCs with the Spooky and the Adventure Pack, they were really well made DLCs that were reasonably priced as well. They had a lot of content, they spiced up the game, but they also increased the replayability factor, so I have to commend Frontier in that regard. Continuing on, we can branch further off into more exotic varieties and species such as those outlined in my mega wishlist I posted several months ago now. But the real next step, however, has to be that of flying and marine reptiles. With pterosaurs being part of the lore since the first novel, and Jurassic World showcasing the first on-screen marine reptile, we have reached a point in time where they should really be in a Jurassic World park builder, and consequently it is disappointing they aren't. I can't imagine Frontier not wanting to add them, but I think they're rather diverting their time to dinosaurs first and realizing the marketability of them as future DLC content. Frontier have consistently been trying to dodge talks of anything related to flying marine reptiles, rather than outright ruling them out, so maybe it is in consideration for the future. The vision of Jurassic World in our minds now encompasses far more than just dinosaurs. We also want prehistoric reptiles that flew and swam as well. It has to be said that even 15 years ago the team behind Operation Genesis had considered the addition of extinct flying and aquatic reptiles, but the idea was scrapped from the game. As the ceremonial successor to this game, I'd love to see this vision finally realized in Jurassic World Evolution. As we look forward to the impending release of this game, we need to remember and appreciate how long this has been coming. Avid veterans of Operation Genesis have been waiting for upwards of 15 years for a spiritual sequel. But let's hope, with the assured hand of Frontier, it gives us countless more memorable experiences as its predecessor had given us those many years ago. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was very different from the content that I usually post, but I wanted to talk about this topic for quite a while, but I couldn't find the right structure or format to do it in. Ultimately, I decided a sort of video essay was the best way to get my point across. Quick shout out to my Discord who have helped me immensely to bounce off ideas for this video. You can join our growing community with the link in the video description. Also, I'd like to thank Calico Jacksaw who has made some pretty neat transitions which were in use in this video. My artist Ite is back with some more of his wonderful artwork that was showcased throughout. As always, stay tuned for more info dumps and more content. Until next time.